Hello everyone and welcome back. My name is Mr. Sweeter. We're going to be discussing how the United States got involved in World War I today. So before we get started with the lesson, I would like you to think about this. Countries go to war for many different reasons. So I would like you to think about two possible reasons why countries would go to war. You've probably learned about this in other classes you have taken or other history classes you've been in. So just take a couple of seconds and think about those two possible reasons why countries would go to war with each other. So our objectives for today. We're going to examine the reasons the United States became engaged in World War I, and we're also going to describe how Americans felt about the war in Europe. Here are our standards. At the top you have the Pennsylvania standards, and at the bottom you have something that's probably new to you, and these are going to be in my lessons, but these standards are from the National Center for History in the Schools from UCLA, and these are just other standards that you could take a look at if you'd like. So our central question for today, or our big question, is why did the United States become involved in World War I? So Woodrow Wilson's diplomacy. Woodrow Wilson is a big believer that democracy is essential for nations to be successful. He also believes that the United States should promote democracy around the world. We can kind of see an example in this in the fact that he sent American troops down to Mexico to stop the Mexican Revolution. So this is just kind of supporting his idea of spreading democracy around the world. So even though President Wilson is in favor of spreading democracy in the world, he's not in favor of getting the United States involved in the war in Europe. And many Americans are going to agree with him on this. But even though many Americans are going to agree with not getting involved in the war, many Americans kind of pick a side. So many Americans are going to side with the Allies. Remember, this is Great Britain, France, Russia, and many Americans are going to side with them because of the fact that we share a similar language, we have the same thoughts, we like the same things, we have the same lifestyle, so most Americans are going to agree with them. However, Americans are going to choose other sides based on their ancestry or where they came from. For example, German Americans are obviously going to side with Germany, and even Irish Americans are going to side with Germany because the Irish were not too happy with how the British had treated them in history in the past, so even Irish Americans are going to somewhat side with Germany. So again, remember, the United States is not taking an official stand on the war in Europe. We're trying to stay neutral, but President Wilson's cabinet and many military leaders were in favor of supporting the Allies as well. Why did they do this? Because they believed that the Allies were the only ones who could keep the balance of power around the world. Now, the Germans and the British are going to use propaganda to sway people to their side to support their cause. Now, while the Germans are going to focus on attacking the Russians and making the Russians look bad, the British are going to focus more of their propaganda towards Americans. Now, what the British are going to do is they're going to try to pull Americans towards their cause, to get them to support the cause, to help them out. And I'm going to show you an example of this on the next slide. This poster is a propaganda poster from World War I from France, and it shows Kaiser Wilhelm II biting into the world. So this obviously shows, the Germans as evil, bad, wanting to control the world. Obviously has a nasty face on. So this is just one example of some of the propaganda posters that were out there. Now, Great Britain is going to use their navy to blockade or stop Germany from obtaining supplies, food for their citizens, military supplies, things of that nature. They're also going to expand their definition of contraband to stop other countries from helping Germany. In response to this, Germany is going to use submarines known as U-boats, which stands for underwater boats in German. The German word is there for you. So Germany announced they would sink any ship without warning. Here I have a picture of what the German U-boats looked like. At the top there you can kind of see a side cutaway of what it looked like. You can see the ship's engines. You can see that it held about 35 men, even though they were very cramped in. And you can also see that it held 6 torpedoes. Now compared to the size of submarines today, or in 2010 at least, you can see that in 2010, the British submarine held 98 men compared to the German U-boat only holding 35 men. But that doesn't mean that the German U-boats weren't successful. They were very successful in what they did. So people around the world became very upset with Germany's decision of unrestricted submarine warfare, meaning they would attack military ships, civilian ships. So people are very upset with this around the world, and this is going to come to a boiling point on May 7th, 1915, because the British passenger ship, the Lusitania, enters this war zone, and they didn't respond to a German submarine. So the German submarine opened fire and sank the ship, and 1,200 passengers, including 128 Americans, were killed when this ship sank. There were rumors later on, or things said later on, that the Lusitania was transporting weapons or carrying things to Great Britain. Those were other things that may have been the cause of Germany sinking it. But either way, it did have civilian passengers, and many people were very upset that Germany had fired upon a civilian ship. Here's some newspaper articles from the sinking of Lusitania. You can see one from the New York Herald there, and even the Boston Evening Globe. So the Zimmermann telegram. So even though there's a lot of outrage at the loss of so many lives, including Americans, President Wilson is still going to hold strong to his policy of neutrality. Now, he's going to let Germany know that he doesn't approve of their policy of unrestricted submarine warfare, but that's about as far as he's going to go. He's going to let them know he's very not happy with what's going on. In 1916, Wilson is going to win re-election on the slogan, "He kept us out of war." A lot of people like that President Wilson kept us out of war, among his other policies, but he does win re-election. In January of 1917, Arthur Zimmermann, who was a German official, messages the German ambassador in Mexico. On the next slide, we'll tell you why. The telegram asked the German ambassador in Mexico to make an offer to the Mexican government. Zimmermann proposed that the Mexican government should align itself or become an ally with Germany in the event of war with the United States. In return for this, Germany would return territory Mexico lost after the Mexican-American War, including Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. Okay, and there's a picture of Arthur Zimmermann there. So Germany is basically trying to make a pact with Mexico behind the Americans' backs. So we're on the brink of war. However, the telegram never reached Mexico. It was intercepted by British intelligence, and it gets leaked to American newspapers. And obviously, we as Americans were pretty furious about it. We were pretty upset that, Germany was trying to do this behind our back. So a lot of Americans are going to, clamor for war. They're going to want war with Germany. But again, Wilson still kind of holds calm and tries to keep everything at peace. Germany is going to continue unrestricted warfare, and they're going to sink 6 American merchant ships. At this point, President Wilson realizes he really has no choice, and he goes to Congress, and he asks Congress to declare war on Germany on April 2nd, 1917, and a few days later, on April 6th, Congress agrees, and it is at this point that the United States is now at war and involved in the war in Europe. Okay, so just to kind of bring things to a conclusion here, and I'm going to try and do these at the end of each lesson that I do, but it's just kind of a graph that kind of shows you how things flowed. On the left-hand side there, it says that Wilson wants neutrality but strength. So Wilson, again, wants to spread democracy around the world. He wants to keep the peace, but he wants to keep America out of World War I. German policies, such as sinking ships and Allied propaganda from the British, are going to convince Americans otherwise. And finally, the Zimmermann telegram and continued submarine warfare are going to bring America into war. Everyone, that's all I have for this lesson, so if you would please complete the assignment for this, I'd appreciate it, and we'll see you next time. Take care.